Welcome, everybody. We're going to give it about one more minute as we get people online, but we are really excited that you're all here to do a refresh kind of conversation about the NCIDQ as we're kind of leaning into testing season, study season. So give us about a little under a minute and we're going to get started here. And happy Thursday. We're almost to Friday, right?
And it's warmer.
It's almost 40 degrees, so we'll take it. Sunshine. So, okay. Well, happy Thursday, everyone. We're going to get started here. We're going to be talking about today the NCIDQ Prep Talk, Designing Your Path to Licensure. And so we're going to introduce everyone here soon, but we're going to kick it off to my partner, Maria here.
Although we want to say, first, we want to start off saying thank you to all of our Ohio, Kentucky chapter benefactors. You can see everyone that's here on this screen: Tarquette, Kinetic, Dan Binford and Associates, Interface, LBI Boyd, Design Resources, and all of our other friends that are on this screen. Especially, we would like to say thank you to our advocacy sponsors. Just in the next slide. HDA, NAC, Kinetic, and HDS, Hitty, Francisco, and Siebold. Mostly want to say thank you to them because what we're talking about today, it goes along with our advocacy efforts for the interior design profession.
And today we're going to introduce our panelists, but I do want to mention today's conversation does provide an IDCC credit, which we will provide a QR code at the end. And if there's any issues, we will provide an email contact for you to reach out to. And we will be answering questions at the end. But if you think of anything during our conversation, just plug it into the chat. We will address it. And we do appreciate any of you when you signed up and provide some questions. We did get those and we will be addressing those. So we want to say a big thank you today. Our panelists, we have Candy Bozard, a recent NCIDQ champion, Bethany Williams out of Cleveland, who is someone you've seen here recently before on one of our previous conversations. And then here in Columbus, myself, Michelle C. Burmeister, and Maria Carpenter, who are your advocacy advocates for the Columbus City Center. And before we get started, we're going to try and do a quick poll, and it should populate if I can figure out the technology to see where you guys are with your studying for the exam. Have you started studying? Are you not yet? You're thinking about it, but let's just see how today's conversation goes. So give you a quick second to say yes, no. How's that going? Okay, we're gonna click in the poll here. So it looks like we're about like 50-50 yes and no, but that's okay. So we'll share the results there. So about half-half. So that's okay. Doesn't matter. Maybe change how you're feeling about it today. So so let's kind of get into it. And I'm going to kick it off to Bethany to give us a little more information here.
Awesome. Thanks, Michelle and Maria, for inviting me back for another round of NCIDQ fun. I do work out of the Cleveland Akron City Center, but am an NCIDQ ambassador because when I went through my journey of trying to figure out what I wanted to do, how I wanted to go about this, I just felt like there was like no resources and no one to kind of help me and just like be real and talk with me through it. So I am an ambassador. If you have questions afterwards and want to follow up or need some suggestions on things, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. But we're going to kind of go through really high level of what the NCIDQ is and sort of what the testing is and some of the important details. But just to kind of kick us off, NCIDQ is sort of the industry standard for interior design. There's lots of tests out there that you can take, and some of you may be debating, do I go for well? Do I go for lead? Fit well? All sorts of different things. But really the only test that is solely focused on interior design and the qualifications of what we do day in and day out is NCIDQ. Um, so it is a differentiator when you put that NCIDQ after your name. Clearly stands out that you have sort of taken that next step within your career, have elevated yourself and sort of certified yourself. Along with that can potentially come a salary increase. We have seen that quite a bit in our market here. Not guaranteed per se, but definitely a conversation you should be having with your employer as you're preparing to take the test, and especially when you pass. And then the nice thing about NCIDQ is it is recognized by all jurisdictions across the United States as well as parts of Canada, and I think even it's looking to go into Mexico. But you can see there's approximately 38,000 certified NCIDQ certificate holders across the country. So just kind of quickly, what we'll look at today is exam information, what the application process looks like, dates and deadlines and fees, all those nitty-gritty details, a little bit about scoring the exam and the certification. As always, CIDQ.org has like all the information you could ever need. And then that link below that website is to the candidate handbook. Super important, like as you're going through this process, they have a really great, I think it's like 50 pages now, PDF that you can download. It's hyperlinked. It will tell you everything and anything that you could possibly need. If you don't find it in there, reach out to me and let me know. Okay, quickly. So over the exams, there's three different parts of the NCIDQ, the IDFX, the IDIX, and the IDPX. They're separate exams. You sit for them at separate times. You schedule them individually, but you do need to pass all three in order to become NCIDQ certified. The IDFX focus, and the way the tests are sort of broken up nowadays, this is kind of a recent change, is to walk you through the whole design process of a project, much like you do in your daily career. So IDFX starts right at the beginning. We're focusing on programming and conceptual design and more of that schematic sort of thinking. The IDFX is designed to be taken right out of school or even while you're in college currently. So you can take that now as a student, which is awesome. You don't have to wait for the 2 years experience to take that test. A lot of that fundamental information. The IDIX, which may be a new acronym for some of you, this is what has recently replaced the practicum test. So IDIX is taking us into that next phase of the design process. It's going to focus more on design development and construction drawings within a project. And then the last test, the IDPX, which also stands for the professional, takes you through sort of that end portion of the project. And we're going to look more at like construction administration, project management, those types of things. All of the tests now are sort of administered in a same manner. So they are all multiple choice. They are vignettes where there are small sort of like little project studies, if you will. Like your vignette may be a floor plan, or it may be a reflected ceiling plan, or you're looking at a millwork section detail. And then there will be 3 to 5 questions associated with that vignette, and then you'll get a new vignette to answer the questions. So the question styles range. There's multiple choice, which is sort of standard testing. Drag and place, which you can kind of imagine like you're taking something from the side and sort of placing it in the middle of the screen based on how the question is formatted. I've seen like a millwork section drawing, for example, where you're labeling all the pieces and parts of that section and all of your answers are over to the side where you have to sort of drag and place them. Fill in the blank, pretty self-explanatory. And hotspot is sort of identifying locations within whatever that vignette is showing you and creating like a hotspot on top of them. Here you can see there's different amounts of questions per test and duration per test as well. And then there are some pre-test questions. You don't get to know which ones those are, unfortunately, but this is sort of NCIDQ keeping up with what they need to refresh the test with in the future. So they throw in some test questions that they'll look at including in the future. So the process of sort of getting started here, there's different eligibility and work experiences. You can kind of see on the screen, there's a couple different paths depending on whether you went to school as an interior designer or an architect, what your degree is, did you go to a CETA accredited versus non-accredited, and then how that sort of equates into your work hours. In the end, it kind of all works out to about 2 hours full time for anyone with an interior design education. Um, and kind of newer in the market. And I say these things because like a lot of times we get caught up like talking to coworkers who took the test like 5+ years ago. Things have changed. So just be careful what people are telling you. But one of the newer things is making sure that your experience hours are crossing off some of these categories. So the hours that you're seeing there, they don't add up to the total amount of hours that you need to work. In fact, it's like less than half of what you actually need. But what they're trying to do is just making sure you're getting experience in all of the elements of a project. So programming, schematic design, contract administration, design development, making sure you're kind of crossing off all those buckets. There's some really great tools out there that you can download, amazing spreadsheets that auto-populate things and tell you how many more hours you have to work. But it's all of these hours do need to sort of be monitored and signed off by like a sponsor if it's someone you work with that is NCIDQ certified, or you could reach out to the ambassadors and have one of us sign off on your hours too. The application, if you're going for all three, you need your school transcripts, your work verification that we just talked about, all those hours that are signed off by a supervisor or a sponsor, and then you'll pay your application and fee. For anyone who's a student on right now or hasn't worked that sort of like 2-year minimum requirement, and you're looking to take the IDFX only, all you'll need is your school transcripts and pay your application fee. And then when you're ready to go apply for the ID, PX and actually now the ID IX, I missed that little update there. You'll kind of add that additional work verification hours and pay the application fee. The two application fees sort of add up to the same if you were doing all three tests at one time. Okay, so dates, deadlines, sort of figuring out fees. So I'll kind of back it up. We'll start in looking at when the tests are administered. There's a spring test and a fall test. The spring test is offered in April. The whole month you can kind of schedule based on the testing center near you, and actually kind of new recently, you can take these online at home with the proper setup. Is all the whole month of April, and then same for the fall test. It's the whole month of October. You can take all three in one month. You can take two in a day if you're really a superstar, or you can kind of spread them out and figure out how you want to do that. So then kind of backing up from that, if you're applying for the spring exam, you have your payment and scheduling period, basically from the beginning of January all the way up until the end of March. And then you need to make sure your application is in, it's kind of about like 6 months prior to that. So between August and January 31st, that's that application period where you'll submit your transcripts, your work experience, etc. So that's kind of the same backup, same for the fall exam. From July to September is when you'll pay and schedule your exams. And then if you're thinking of applying, it's kind of, we're in that time period now, so you can't really apply to take the spring exam, but you could apply to take the fall exam. And then here's the breakdown of the testing. There is an application fee. That's the upfront sort of payment to apply. And then based on the test that you want to take, they are priced ever so slightly different for whatever reason. But if you're doing a little bit of budgeting there, you can kind of break down and see what you can expect. Resources to study. This is sort of a hot topic and a little bit of flux that we're in right now. We're going to look at the blueprints a little bit later, but the kind of the bigger, more mainstream popular study materials. And sorry, I should have prefaced this. I'm like taking off my ambassador hat and like putting on like a personal designer hat. NCIDQ doesn't really promote study materials per se. They give you all of the books that they have written questions off of, and there's a whole list of them. But this is kind of like what we're seeing out in the market right now. So Q Practice is a really great online platform. We at the IIDA Ohio Kentucky chapter actually have discount codes that you can participate in and register for that. So you can do that for a couple of months ahead of the testing period. It breaks down study material, what to read by week, and different small like tests. You can take full practice tests, quite a plethora of things you can participate in. The other like sort of book Bible thing that most of us have utilized while studying is that in reference manual by David Kent Ballast. We're in a little bit of a weird time period with this right now, so I do want to preface that this book was published a few years ago. NCIDQ just recently updated all of the exams based on new and current codes. So this book is not up to speed with that. Now, PPI, the publisher, does have like these content maps where they'll kind of give you, it's kind of almost like a supplement, is what I imagine. I haven't looked at it personally, but this is the vibe I'm getting is to sort of supplement your book and kind of make sure you're getting the up-to-date information, and they'll kind of break it down based on that study book. So if you have that book or even an older one, make sure you're taking a look at what that content map is and getting your most up-to-date codes. The other thing we like to share is the exam pass rates. This can be a little bit depressing at first to look at when you see sort of that like 50 to 60 percentage. But I kind of look at that as a positive thing because if this test was easy and everyone could pass it, then why is it sort of the qualification for all of us? So don't let it discourage you. I think that just sort of speaks to the legitimacy of the test. It is challenging. It's not easy. It's not a cakewalk. But when you do pass and do put those letters after your name, it really does mean something. So don't let it discourage you. You can do it. And we've recently had 9 interior designers receive their certification with this past fall test, which is super exciting. So, and I think that is the end for me, and I'll kick it back over.
Yeah. So I think we're going to lean into our discussion as Bethany was saying, like even for me, we all have different experiences and it's what makes us great designers. Because if it was easy, we'd all be on HGTV just doing something a little different, right? Um, but we're gonna kind of go back and forth organically and talk about our different experiences. And now, there's this great challenge of, they're reevaluating the questions and how things are done. So we recognize moving forward the process and exams are going to look a little differently. So we'll have to lean on our community to help us navigate these new changes and what that looks like. So these prep talks and conversations are going to look a little different moving forward, but we're hopeful we can, use our resources and figure out that together. So with the goal of us all passing, with whether it's the first time or it takes a couple, it's going to happen. So I'm going to kind of kick us off with the first question to Candy, who is a recent uh, got her NCIDQ, which is great. So, how did you approach the exams? And I think this is a question someone had put in when they signed up. Did you take them all at once? Did you space them out? What was your approach, and why did you do that?
Thanks, Michelle. I did pass in this past fall of 2025. So when I first started looking into them, I had just graduated. So I graduated from Ohio State in 2023. And the advice is always try to take that first one when you're just coming out of college because you know how to study. And getting back into that after you've been out of school for a while is really difficult. So I took a little time adjusting to a full-time work schedule. So I ended up taking the IDFX in April of 2024, so about a year after I started working. And then I did the second 2 parts this past fall, so about a year and a half in between. I spaced them out just for me personally. Doing and studying for all three at one time felt very overwhelming. So taking one when I could without needing all the work experience and then waiting a little more time was more manageable for me. And when it comes to what you need to study for both exams, you're really studying a lot of this similar content for when I took it, and knowing that it's a little different now, you still might have some overlap. But for me, it felt good to do it within that year and a half time span to refresh the memory for those second 2 tests, but also still feel like I had that knowledge from studying the first time.
Yeah, that's a good response. I did the same thing. I just felt like it was too much to take it out once, and everyone's pace is different. So I'm glad that's what worked for you. So Bethany, and then you had mentioned maybe it's been a little bit since you took the NCIDQ. What motivated you to pursue taking your exam and getting the certification?
It was sort of twofold for me. Fresh out of college and kind of working my first job, I was at a place where a lot of people were starting to study for their exam and take their test and pass. I got jealous of that. I was like, oh, that's really cool. But I also kind of always saw it as like the final step in my career. Getting a college degree was sort of a step in the process, not necessarily the end. It was really important for me to kind of see it through and kind of complete that element of my career.
Yeah. And you've been very helpful because you're an NCIDQ ambassador as well, which is we're lucky to have you. Um, and with leading these conversations, what is your advice for yourself and then for others? At what point do you think it's ideal for us all to be taking the exams?
It's a tough question. I think Candy sort of the nail on the head with taking the IDFX as soon as you're ready, and kind of like rolling out of your testing vibe from college. But with work experience and sort of making sure you're getting that proper experience and crossing sort of all elements of the project, even if you do have some hours under construction administration, for example, it may not be the right hours to kind of make you feel comfortable. I experienced that personally. I was working for a retail headquarters, and the work we did was much different than what you do at an architecture firm. So I did get my hours. I worked under an NCIDQ certified person, but I could have used some more experience in some different areas. So make sure you're feeling really good about the experience that you're getting, and also sort of judge it based on the timeline of your life, which, it could be hard, but if you're planning on, switching jobs or moving or getting married and that's going to take all of your time, sort of weigh your options. You do have to dedicate a lot of time to studying for this. It's certainly something that I sat down weekly for. So sort of weighing all those together, you got to make the best decision for yourself.
Yeah, I like that response. Yeah, we're all like in different times of our lives and different jobs. So I think evaluating what makes the most sense, but also knowing there's a path to each way, depending where we are. So Candy, what was your study schedule like through your path of studying for you?
Like Bethany said, it was pretty time consuming. I wrote out myself a schedule that I would try to stick to how many sections of the textbook I would use a week. So I did use the interior design reference manual that Bethany had mentioned. And it comes with that nice content map. So you can really say, I need to do this many sections and I have 8 weeks till my exam. That's a pretty short time period. I wouldn't recommend that. But you can really say, like, I need to be reading this at this point and this at this point. And for me, just dedicating an hour up to 2 or 3 hours, like every night, was something that I could manage. And if I wasn't able to get it done during the weekday, just with the stress of work and things like that, the weekend to sit down and catch myself back up to speed, I really enjoyed having that schedule and knowing that I was on track. And even budgeting in 2 to 3 weeks to take some practice tests before. That was helpful because then I would go back and say, I really didn't know that content as much as I thought I did, and then reread a whole chapter again.
Okay. And we're talking about like weeks and hours, but if we look at like studying for this, like as a whole, would you say 2 months, 1 month, 3 months? What are you looking at as a bigger picture for one exam or three exams? What worked for you?
So speaking for one exam, when I took it in April, I planned to start studying beginning of the year, so January 1st. And it's always a plan that maybe doesn't come into action as soon as it should. So I would say I probably committed to it by mid-January, end of January. And it was similar for when I just took it in the fall. So 4 months out, I tried to schedule my exams towards the end of the period that you could take it just to give myself a little more time. So 4 months out was when I started doing it. And even for the two exams I took at the same time, that did feel appropriate for me. And just having a little more commitment to actually keeping my hours within that couple month period was what helped.
Yeah,
No,
I
that
think
makes
that's
sense.
always a big consideration. Like we're all different types of planners and how long we think a task will take. So that's really helpful. I know that was also a question that someone had. And interesting tidbit here. I know I'm going to let Maria kind of have some like back and forth, but she also has, you could speak to it, an architectural license in the state of, which state is it, Maria?
I have Ohio and Wisconsin.
Exactly. So she's
Mhm.
going to talk about a little bit later about legislation and how this is also really important to what we're the momentum we have for Ohio. Um, but anyways, she's a champion, and I just want to turn over to her for some of the other questions that we've been thinking of that we wanted to touch on today.
Thanks, Michelle. So Candy, since you just took the exams, do you have any tips or tricks? And Bethany, feel free to jump in too if you're thinking about, going in the Wayback Machine when you took the test. When you were studying, were there any study tricks?
I think the most helpful thing for me being a multifaceted learner was finding some resources outside of just reading the book. So I read the Interior Design Reference Manual, and then IIDA HQ also offered an NCIDQ prep course, which I believe they've continued to offer and are offering for the spring season. By Design Success Network. So they have a whole series where they sit down and talk about each exam individually. And so watching them talk about things, they did practice questions live for us. That was an extra bonus on top of reading and understanding the material that way. And additionally, it was about reading the building code for me as well. That was a big thing that even in your career, like understanding is super helpful. So reading the chapters that CIDQ said, like we build off of these chapters, these are the things you should know, like that was an extra bonus to it as well. So just stacking information for me in different formats and different platforms was what was very helpful.
Do they let you take breaks during the exam?
Yes, you have one break in the middle. So nobody told me this in advance, so I'll tell all of you. Your exam is split, and hopefully it's still the same for 26. Your exam is split in half. So your first half of questions, once you reach that halfway point and you've reviewed all your questions, you can go back to them. So that's your break point then. You get 15
Okay.
minutes, you get a snack. In between them, you can go to the bathroom and your clock is running at that point. So they build in that break time. So you can always come back early and have that time if you don't need all of it. And then you take your second half. And the place that I took my exam was very nice about it. You could, if you needed to go to the bathroom in the middle of it, you can just leave. Your clock is still running. But there's just that one break that they give you officially.
I will say that was one thing that I literally just thought of when I was taking any of the tests that I've taken, having that snack in the middle. Like my mom always gave me a bar of chocolate when I was taking like the SATs and ACTs. And that like jump of sugar really helps, it at least helped me, in the middle of taking tests to have that nice little boost. So snacks are important. Um, Bethany, did you have any tips and tricks from when you took all of your tests?
Yeah, I think those are good ones, Candy. I especially like finding additional resources outside the book. And like if you're not finding that experience like with your in your current like job, like one of the examples I could think of is like measuring square footages of building in leasable spaces and rentable spaces. That was something I was like so not familiar with, and there was some firms out there that had produced some documents that were super helpful. So lean on your like IITA colleagues, industry colleagues, see what you can kind of find out there. Another thing that was helpful for me for studying is I did at least half of my studying in like a public place. The testing centers can be a little bit like anxious feeling. There's lots of weird noises. You're in like an environment you're not used to. So for me, I tried to, and I kind of am a person who struggles to like read things and comprehend immediately. So to do that with like noises around me and people around me and rustling and whatnot was super helpful because that's ideally the testing environment that you'll be in day of. So.
That actually is really helpful to think about. Yeah. Um, so for both of you, since you have passed, and Candy, especially since you've recently passed, Has having the NCIDQ certification like opened any doors for you guys? Bethany, do you want to keep going since you're nodding your head?
Sure, yeah, it's certainly a conversation. A lot of time I've had several clients who will be like, what are these letters after your name? What does that mean? So it's one, it just sort of reemphasized the reputability of myself, of my firm. My firm has certainly marketed how many certified interior designers we have that work here. So that's always been really great and a nice advocacy moment to kind of talk about what we do, why we do it, and why this is a really important thing of our career.
I'd second that. I think just having the title or knowing that I have the title for the last 3 months has been very like confidence boosting in myself and to for other people to know that as well. I do think it is like another level of respect and appreciation for what we do in that regard. I will also say, even before I had the NCIDQ title, I think just saying that you want to take the exam is a big thing in your career as well, knowing that there's that's where you want to be and that there's a blueprint for how you get there was something that I used pretty early on in my career to say, this is what I want to know. This is what the industry says I should know and should be able to do. So I was able to take that blueprint and bring it to my principals and say, here's what I want to learn. And I had leverage for that educational perspective to get to where I wanted to be. So in both those aspects, I think making good use of the time that you are studying for the NCIDQ is absolutely valuable. And then having the title after you pass your exams is extremely important as well. So I would leverage that time that you are studying to get to where you want to be.
And I love that you took the blueprint and you said, this is what I want to learn, because like this isn't about just taking a test and about having the letters and getting the race. Like all of those things are great, but actually having that knowledge and being able to apply it in the field and understand why we do what we do, like that I love. I love that so much. Um, okay, so not a fun question, but did either one of you fail an exam? I know I
I
did.
can start that one. I did. Yeah. I failed the practicum. And this was a little bit of like taking exams in a certain order, and I would not have recommended starting with that. I had taken a study course that I don't even know if it's offered anymore, but it focused a lot on that exam. So I was like, well, this is all fresh in my brain. I should take this right now. And I just wasn't ready for it. So after that, I was like, let's pause. Let's go take the IDFX, get one under my belt, make myself feel really good. And then after that, I was cruising. So
That's awesome. Did you have to overcome any sort of mental blocks with it when you were going up to take it again? Or like,
a little bit. I think like I needed to hype myself up and regrow that confidence. The first time I took it, I didn't really talk about taking it. Like I didn't want people to know because I didn't want them to ask me, oh, did you pass? Did you fail? And then after that, I was like, no, that's silly. I need this to like also kind of hold myself accountable too, like, because
yeah.
I don't want to fail. But then it sort of kind of kicked me into high gear.
Yeah, I know I failed my prac the first time I took it too. I did the crazy thing of taking all three exams at once in the same month because I just was like, you know what, we're gonna do it. We're gonna commit. And I definitely wore myself out doing that process. I know so many people that have been able to do that and they were able to pass the first time, but I think it's just a good reminder to everybody that's out there. Like, if you fail, that's not saying anything against you. Like, it happens. Everyone goes through that process. So keep your head up and keep going. Okay, last question for both of you. If you could tell someone just starting out the process for this journey, one thing, what would it be?
It's hard to think of just one thing. Um, Number one, I think I would say use your resources. There's a lot of advice that I got from my coworkers when I was an intern or even just starting out that was extremely helpful to understand what their experience with the exam was. And asking them like, what were your hardest points? What were your greatest study materials? So even beyond our conversation, just the people in your life that you know have been through those same experiences are great to ask. And leveraging anything you can while you're starting out your career, even in school, knowing what you want to be in the future and take this exam, and using it as a point to say, I want to learn this and this and this, um, is just the best thing that you can do when you're starting. It's for me, it was all about learning and wanting to further my education. And so it's a passion for continuing learning.
That's good. I would say just to add to that, always have the confidence that you can do it. There's definitely gonna be some moments where you're like, oh, I so can't do this, but you can. Like sometimes you need a little bit of a reset. The studying is hard, the testing is hard. It's not a cakewalk, but you absolutely can do it. And the good news is once you pass, you pass. You're done. You never have to retest or prove your skills again in 20 years. You just got to pay your fee every year for your certification.
Yep.
It's
That
big,
and
it's a big
your
relief.
That's a great transition to there are requirements to maintain that
Yeah.
NCIDQ.
You do have to do your CEUs, which are it's actually fun. And most of the time your reps will come in with presentations, and it's really just, making sure that you are maintaining like a strong handhold onto what new products are, how they impact the health, safety, and welfare of the individuals that are within the environment. And being an NCIDQ certificate holder, in Ohio, you have a requirement of having 5 credit hours every year. For Kentucky, it's a credit hour requirement of 8. And today you earn, I don't know if we are HSW or if we're just IDCC today.
Yes.
Just IDC. But for Kentucky, if you are a certified interior designer, then you have 12 credit hours required per year. And we'll talk about the potential for Ohio here shortly.
Yep. And then before we talk about some advocacy updates, we just want to really quickly just here on the screen, we don't need to read every item. Bethany, if you just want to give us a high level overview. Bethany had talked about earlier, there is a new format. There are some adjustments to the exams. And again, we will get through it together, what those changes are. And we're eager to see how that change influences those test takers this spring. Bethany, if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, I think the biggest stuff that, and we've sort of touched on some of this, is now all of the tests are the same with the vignettes and the style of questions that are asked. There's no sort of like large case studies anymore. You just have these smaller mini vignettes. The reason the blueprints change, and this happens, this is not like the first time we've seen this. There is a practice analysis survey that goes out to certified designers every so often. And I think it's every 5 years. Every 5 years, then CIDQ goes back and analyzes what people are saying is going on in the industry, and then they reevaluate their testing. So it's a good thing, right? We got to find the positive in this. It's a good thing that the tests are changing, because you are going to truly be tested on like what the industry is seeing today, not what the test was maybe looking at 5 or 10 years ago. So. Yeah, all this is kind of listed here. Codes are a really big thing too. Make sure you're looking at the correct and updated codes. All of that is also linked on CIDQ's website. So don't be afraid to go on there and click around and find what you need to find.
Yep. And again, as touching what Bethany just mentioned, this is all online. This was just our group doing a deep dive of what we could understand the changes are and to communicate that to you guys. So please do your research prior to testing. And then to kick it off to Maria, again, myself and Maria are your Columbus City Center advocacy representatives.
So advocacy matters for, the profession of interior design. We are all very passionate, as you can tell, about our profession. And really, so we're in the process of working on a draft of a bill, which I'm going to go in a little bit more on the next slide. But to support our advocacy efforts, we do have a merch store that has fun products. So we have a QR code here linked on the screen if you want to buy any swag. But yeah, the next slide. So overall, interior design is the only profession in Ohio that is currently not regulated by state legislature. And that's something that we're dealing with, across the United States and parts of Canada. So this is really just a map showing the status of different states. Some states have some legislature that has gone through with Title Act, and we'll have a town hall eventually to talk a little bit further about this. But we are currently working on a draft of our bill that we're going to be collaborating with AIA Ohio to review the language. And we're working with a lobbyist that we've previously worked with. So we are hoping to begin the process of pursuing legislation. And another thing that's just really exciting. So Michelle mentioned, I also have my architectural license, and I went through what this screen is even showing, a little snapshot. So NCARB, who regulates the architects, and NCIDQ, who they're in charge of the NCIDQ process, they created this joint report back in 2018, and they actually went through a very tedious and long process of analyzing both NCIDQ and the ARES, which are the architectural tests, and took a look at where are there overlaps, where are there differences. There's a YouTube video for those who want to nerd out on it, and that's what this QR code links to. So that also has started to influence, I'm sure, the way that these exams are being reformatted so that it starts to show even further alignment between our two professions.
And
Michelle?
then, yeah, we'd love for you guys to get involved, and don't be scared. It's not some large long-term commitment. I forget what the term for young folks is for like no commitment or minimal commitment. But there's a QR code here that you can just fill out to just like if you would like to be involved or just learn more, please feel free to scan it. This recording should be on YouTube in some short term in the future. That you can scan it again, or again, reach out to one of us. And we don't have a slide, but there is a Get Connected event tonight in Grandview at Loth, 5:30, that we could talk to you a little bit more about this opportunity. But again, scan this code or reach out to any of us or go to our website. You can learn more if you'd like to get involved with any committee, really. But advocacy is a good one to support our interior design industry. And I think we had a couple of questions from, again, when people signed up for the event, but if there's any questions specifically in the chat, if you'd like to post those, please do. I can't see if there's questions, but I'll just kind of read off like two specifically from the input. Someone asked specifically if there's any online study platforms or tools. And I think we can all agree on Q Practice is one very specifically. And I think Bethany maybe mentioned that IADA has discount codes, or maybe our group specifically offers those. I'm not sure if I believe they're already live or active, or something has happened. If any of you guys could speak to that. Or maybe Candy, you could speak to if there was any other specific resources that you utilized for studying within the past year.
Yeah, I can talk to that. I went old school. I did not use Q practice for it. It was mainly a budget choice on my end not to, because I didn't have the backing of any place that I was working at to help me pay for that. So I used the interior design reference manual, and then I also used those resources that IIDA HQ had for those couple sessions where they discussed more in depth the tests. So I was really out there Googling who had what that would help me advance in terms of like watching videos and watching other people speak to certain topics. So Google, but IIDA was actually my biggest help.
That's great to hear. Um, One other question, there's two more that I have in front of me. If you could go back, what would you change about how much you studied or the way you studied? For me, it was a while ago, but I discovered Poshmark like 2 weeks before I tested, and that just ruined me.
Mm.
It was bad. I didn't pass that test, but I bought some cool things.
For myself, I think sticking to a schedule was hard for me. Like life gets in the way, things become more important, um, and you just too tired to do it some days. But if I was to go back and change it, I might have started a little bit earlier than I felt I needed to have a good cushion at the end for anything that I fall behind on. Because I had enough time. I was reasonably confident going into it, but I felt like I could have been more confident with more of this buffer period to keep looking up practice exams and things like that in between. So sticking to a schedule, I couldn't say that I would change myself and actually be able to do that, but starting earlier so I would have more time to see that commitment through.
That's
I
great.
think having a good playlist also helps. Having a good study playlist. That definitely helped me. But I wish that I would have started taking the exams sooner. I waited, I think I was like 6 years into my career before I started, and I forgot how to study. And that was a learning process, was relearning how to study and starting to overthink that whole process.
Yeah. I think also it's really important to think about, even if you're starting in college, like I didn't know who to ask through the process, but like making sure I was taking like process or documenting like my hours and having like making sure I was under an architect or NCIDQ professional, like keeping track of that stuff too. But I was able to get that documentation later. That wasn't like a vice for me, but I wasn't thinking about those things either.
Yeah, on the tracking your hours portion of it, I will say, because when I started doing that, I was going like one of the newer ones to have to start looking at those hours. So I had that confusion at first as to say like, how am I supposed to track my hours? Like I think um, architects have a pretty website to put their hours into, and we don't have that
Mhm.
yet. So I thought I was missing something. Is there an official platform to do it? There's not, like Bethany was saying, those Excel spreadsheets or some other format for you to track your hours. It is an individual thing. Just giving yourself the ownership and committing to actually documenting what you did and where you are in those hours.
Yeah. There's one more question. It said, what study methods or strategies did you find most helpful? But I almost like want to preface it is like maybe rewording this question. It's like, what thing motivated you the most to want it? And I feel like when I even dug into this whole process of like wanting to take the test is like finding your why and like
Mm.
to really make why is this important to you? Um, I think that's something you should think about, like even if you want to take this, like and making sure you're doing it for you versus like your employer, like because your friend's doing it. Like think about that. But um, I don't know, is there any strategies or thing like to build off that? Do you guys have any opinions of like your why or anything like that?
I think that's a really good way to look at it is the motivation behind wanting to take it is what fueled me wanting to sit down and study. On the side of study materials, there are some flashcards out there that you can buy. I think the interior design reference manual comes with a package you can buy that has those index cards, so flashcards for questions. They also have books on the practice tests too. So they have two practice tests per book per exam. Unless they do come out with it with an eighth edition, it's on the seventh edition, which is the
Hmm.
old exams. But that helped me was those flashcards. And you can look up different Quizlets that people have made. But as we are going into a new version of the exam, like I'd caution how much you trust them, but there is universal knowledge for quite a few things that you can look up, like what is a lighting plan and find information on that. Um, Another really specific thing that I was told in my study sessions is some people had to name the parts of an elevator. So like how Bethany said, millwork sections, know your elevators and escalators, just a tad though, because it didn't come up for me, but it was said that it was a very big topic for some people.
Interesting.
That's
Good to know.
good. That's great. I don't know if there's any more questions. I'm not seeing anything in the chat. You guys should see the IDCC QR code on your screen. And if it's technologies thinking it's Friday, please email the idacbusdirector@gmail.com. Again, there's an event here in Columbus at 5:30 at Loth, which is in Grandview, I think on Grandview Avenue. So we'd love to see you and chat about volunteer opportunities or just get to know us all a little bit better. Again, go to our website to see upcoming events. We really appreciated your time and your interest in the NCIDQ and some of our advocacy efforts. And we appreciate our panelists today, Bethany and Candy, and everyone to put this together today on short notice. And we wish you all the best. If you're taking the exam or thinking about it, please reach out with questions and lean on your community. There's definitely been someone in your shoes. And we hope you have the great rest of your week. And thank you for your time.